Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by SecuriCentrix. SecuriCentrix is a trusted cybersecurity company with offices in Dublin, Cape Town, and London. SecuriCentrix provides expert advisory services, primarily in the finance and fintech industries, with tailored security solutions to fit your specific needs and regulatory challenges. In this episode, Owen Fitzgerald and I take the inevitable plunge into what to make of the FTX mess, and then we resurface with some of the scenarios unfolding on what Elon Musk has in mind for the 250 million daily active users of Twitter. We also look at the hubbub around the control of Tech Nation in the UK, a digital dollar pilot in the US, and how the big tech layoffs in Ireland may be short-term pain but long-term gain. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. Hey Owen, heard you're sick boy.
Hey Pete. Yeah, vomiting bug in my house all week. It's been a disaster.
That sucks. Sorry to hear that.
Nobody's too bad. It's just you can't do anything when people are getting sick around you. The constant, I need a new towel. I need a new change of clothes. I need a new, and the amount of washing I've had to do in the meantime as well.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like what's going on in the crypto markets. Everyone puking.
Exactly.
So it's not just you, brother, and your kids and your wife.
The contagion effect from one of us spread to the rest.
Oh, let's count this moment in history, folks. It's the Fitzgerald family that's attributable for everything that's happening right now.
That's it.
Oh, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. But listen, it's been a nutso 10 days. Obviously, we recorded last week's episode when all of this was unfolding, and I did the emergency break-in on Friday morning as the editing was going on and gave a little bit of a rant there, just with some of my own personal feelings. But this has just been crazy. It's moving faster every single day with everything that's coming to light, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what I saw, and I can't remember who to attribute it, but I saw a very good comment on Twitter, and someone just said, a lot of the madness around FTX was already public. Like it's a bit rich after the fact, coming back and saying, oh, they did this and they did this and this is how they operated it. Most of the stuff was already known, whatever about moving money and customer funds, but like how they ran the business was known to everybody.
Yeah.
So,
this was out there. I've been seeing emails, I don't know how true this stuff is. Obviously if it's on Twitter, it has to be true, right, Elon? So but things like methamphetamines and, SBF giving instructions and orientation presentations on how to use methamphetamines to be more efficient and more to accelerate your work practices. Right. I'm like, okay, but who knows? But listen, the one thing that I kind of came up with out of nowhere yesterday was SBF right now is reminding me of that evil Biff Tannen in Back to the Future 2. Okay. Where what happened was that, not to ruin the movie, I mean, it's like, I don't know, 30 years old. No one's going to care. But in Back to the Future, Biff is introduced in 1985 as a middle-aged man who pushes around Marty's father, George. And then when Marty goes back to the 1955, he's a high school bully who makes fun of George and harasses Marty's mother, Lorraine. But then when Marty and Doc Brown travel to the future of 2015 and Back to the Future Part 2, they meet this angry 78-year-old Biff Tannen. And he overhears Marty's plan to use a 2015 sports almanac to go back in time and make money in the 80s, right? So because they did that in the year 2015, Biff goes back, steals the DeLorean, goes back to himself in 1955 and gives himself this sports almanac. And he's got all the results for the next, 60 years on what's happening in the world. And he becomes a millionaire. And you end up in this very evil version of Hill Valley, which is a town that this all takes place in, where Biff is like mayor. He owns a casino. He runs it. He's stolen Lorraine, and so on and so forth. And then through the rest of Back to the Future, they go back and they eradicate all that. So like what SBF has done, and it's, it's not him alone. There's been a gaggle of individuals around him, and both that were part of FTX and external to FTX in Alameda, that have promoted this and have allowed it to happen, allowed it to continue, and allowed this snowball to go downhill, that are now, these, I don't know, evil co-conspirators and we just need to go find whenever that sportsbook was handed over to SBF and get rid of that alternate reality that feels like we're in right now, where SBF stands for Scammy Biff Tannen.
Exactly.
So just to give a bit of a rundown here of the uninitiated. So what happened was that Sam set up Alameda Research, it's a quant trading firm / hedge fund, back in 2017. And they became known for their super aggressive strategies. And Caroline Ellison was implanted as CEO. I don't know if that was at the beginning or sometime during the run up between 2017 and now, but she was, and well, I think gone now, obviously, the CEO. So Sam then set up the FTX crypto exchange in 2019 with a tagline of designed by traders for traders, which sounds a hell of a lot like Enron. And now John J. Ray, the second or third, well, whatever he is, he's the new FTX CEO. And he helped wind down Enron. So then FTX built up billions of deposits in crypto on their exchange, and going against their terms and conditions, they decided to reuse those deposits as they pleased. Not sure when they started doing that. Might have been back around the time of Voyager and 3 Arrows Capital and Terra Luna happening. And basically what it means is that your holdings tab in your FTX app is just a bunch of IOUs. So they're not crypto assets secured digitally in your own wallet. So one of the ways they reused your assets, and probably the biggest way, is that they loaned your assets to Alameda Research, the super aggressive quant trading firm / hedge fund, also owned by SBF, to leverage their trading with borrowed assets. But the loans from FTX to Alameda needed to be collateralized. So what did Alameda use for collateral? Well, they had bought a bunch of the FTX tokens called FTT that FTX had created as basically these loyalty points. The more you hold, the cheaper you're trading. Alameda held over $2 billion on their balance sheet of FTT that they used as collateral for basically the customer deposits, or what were in effect customer deposits, that Alameda borrowed from FTX, all under the watch of Sam Bankman-Fried. So this token, FTT, was basically created out of thin air and then stapled on top of the exchange. And they helped to keep the price afloat of FTT, with one, Alameda's market making the token, and two, FTX using the profits that they earned on the exchange with transaction fees to buy FTT on the open market. But when CZ from Binance, who also held a huge amount of FTT tokens, over $500 million worth of them, announced that he's liquidating, people run for the doors. And they dumped FTT. The FTT token dropped 90%. Alameda's collateral goes through the floor, and they can't repay the loans back to FTX. And then FTX can't meet customer withdrawals. So you file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's it.
I feel like we've been on such a wonderful path with crypto, even with Terra Luna, 3 Arrows Capital, Voyager. This is now 4. Bad things don't happen in 3s, they happen in 4s. This is the 4th crypto winter as well. That all this work that we've been doing, it's not, there's an SBF and there's a FTX and Alameda Research House of Cards, but there's, the whole digital asset march, the crypto march, the Web3 progress that we've made over the last 10, 12 years. All of that is still critically important. All of that will still continue. It's that we've just got this big black mark that is called SBF on what's happened. And we've talked about him plenty of times and talked about him on this podcast as
Positively,
being, wow, look at Sam.
He could be the guy, he was going about lobbying regulators and stuff like that, and go doing it what it appeared to be in the right way. But again, we're not looking too much under the hood.
No,
in that respect.
No.
So.
We haven't been. And shout out to Packy McCormick, because in his not boring newsletter this week, he kind of said, listen, I don't want to write too much about this because so much has been said already, but he did point to what he thought was the best summation, not summation of the events that happened, but kind of the perspectives around the world right now on what's going on with all this. And that was from Mario Gabriel, the Generalist newsletter from the 13th of November that he pointed to. And in this post on the Generalist, Mario gave this whole view into what he called the casino and the genie. I won't get into the casino description. I think we know what that is when it comes to crypto. There's a lot of gambling going on and uninformed trading going on that is just obviously like gambling. But he was drawing this analogy to a genie turning up with 10 chocolates and saying one of them will make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. The other 9 are poisonous. So what are you going to do? Are you going to pick one? Well, start to dig in, do your research, blah, blah, blah. I'll let our listeners read the post. I'm not going to give a full rundown of it, but he gets to the end of it and he's kind of like, doing this analogy around chocolate and crypto. He said, I think there's something to this chocolate. I've thought about it a lot. I've studied, and I believe it could be something remarkable, something miraculous. He said, this is why I am still long crypto. Despite its many flaws, I believe it has miraculous potential to improve our world. Self-sovereign money, smart contracts, and digital property rights are radical, revolutionary ideas that we are in the early innings of understanding and applying. In a matter of decades, we may look back on the state's rigid stranglehold on money as a quirky artifact and obvious overreach. Decentralized finance has its own quirks, but it is held up well. By comparison, showing that code is often less corruptible than people. We may see it bloom more fully in the coming years, right? So, really good kind of, view into all of this. I've been saying to everybody, it's a massive, massive speed bump, but it's not a stop sign. Anyone that is selling to financial institutions and trying to enable financial institutions and their customer bases to connect into DeFi, connect into crypto. There's some analysis of personalities making decisions that we need to dig into a lot more and say, how can we unlock some of these conversations, even in the face of what's happening right now, to show, listen, SBF and FTX are not crypto. They are a nasty combination of multi-fiat crypto e-money wallet type of thing, following no rules, right? Because I think what came out was that they held 0 Bitcoin. Really? For a major for a major crypto exchange to hold no Bitcoin.
It's crazy.
That because all they had was Bitcoin denominated liabilities because they had loaned it all out.
Okay.
Against the terms and conditions of the FTX.com website, your assets will not be reused. So it's a nasty turn of events.
Yeah.
And one that I think is going to have a lot more implications. Gary Gensler has been coming out, even before this happened. And he said, with his view on that most crypto are securities, most crypto assets are securities. As it turns out, there's a connection between Gary Gensler and MIT going back to 2019, 2018. I met Gary Gensler in Dublin when he was speaking at a educational event, when he was teaching a blockchain course at MIT.
Oh, cool.
And he was involved, I think he was working in the department it was some economics department, and the head of that economics department was the father of Caroline Ellison, who was the head of Alameda Research, which Sam Bankman-Fried also owned. So there's some voices going around in DC right now that are suggesting that there's going to be some type of investigation here as to what Gary Gensler's involvement might have been, allegedly.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to,
I
get
know.
into this.
It's crazy.
You can't. What do we always say? You can't make this stuff up, right?
Yeah. That's it. And look, I saw it interesting. I'll just throw it in at the end. I subscribe to Net Interest, which is a newsletter by a guy named Mark Rubenstein, and he was just talking today. The point he was making is that banks go bust more often than we think, or we mightn't even realize. In the 5 years from 2016 to 2020 in the US, 21 banks went bankrupt. The most recent one is October 2020, which was Almena State Bank in Kansas. And I suppose there's regular kind of failures in banking in the US. I suppose the point he was making here was, even in that example of the one in Kansas, that wasn't a large bank as such, but the regulators went in over the weekend on a Friday. Bank closed its doors on a Friday. Regulators went in over the weekend, transferred all the assets and liabilities to a different bank, which was like 60 miles away or whatever. And then on Monday morning, customers woke up to say that they were customers of a new bank. All their deposits were covered under a deposit interest scheme, and it all worked out for everybody. And obviously we've seen that on a larger scale here. And I suppose he was making the direct comparison to, that's the difference. For all the bad and for all the the selling point around crypto and not being regulated and everything, the fact is people's money is safe. on the other hand.
Yep.
Or there's mechanisms to try protect customers and people's money.
Well, Jesus Christ, I had, and of course I could look at this, quarterback, Monday morning quarterback, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
I had opened an FTX account at some point last year, and just so I could buy the audio token, which is the token that is part of the whole Audius network. It's digital music. And I set up the account. I might have sent some ETH over and exchanged the ETH for audio. And then I let it sit there for about a week. And then I moved the audio out of FTX to my MetaMask account. And that's it. Yeah. So I still have that FTX app on my phone. I actually just deleted it this morning. So I know that people were saying delete it right away over the weekend, the last few days. It may contain malware now that FTX has been hacked. So, but I made that move. But to your point, a lot of people didn't. I don't know what happened to Tom Brady, right? He had a lot of his savings, I think. Not a lot of his savings, but he had considerable amount of value. It probably was sitting on FTX.
He had a deep relationship with them, sponsorship and everything.
Yep.
The only thing the kind of last note comment I'd make maybe on it would be, I wonder, will this be a kind of Theranos moment for the industry? It's only now really that you're seeing kind of biotech solutions being brought back to market. It set it back nearly 10 years in terms of wider spread adoption or customer facing sort of stuff. And I just wonder, will it have that effect? Because aside from anything else, it has really embarrassed a lot of investors.
Big time. Who said, listen, I don't know why I feel this, but it's like I'm talking to the world's first trillionaire, is what one investor said.
Yeah. What was that stupid one where they were interviewing him about giving him money and he was playing League of Legends at the same time? And this was great.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, hyper smart people do that. They can listen and have an intelligent conversation like that while imagining that they're sitting in a boardroom and they're looking up at the walls and seeing monkeys jumping around. That actually happened to me once. I wasn't the guy seeing imaginary monkeys, but someone else in a boardroom with me said that to me. So what are you looking at? He's like, oh, kind of bored. I'm imagining there's monkeys jumping around up there. And this was a hyper intelligent, very smart person, also in quant trading, like Sam. So
fair enough.
There are people like that out there. So instead of seeing monkeys jump around, and you play League of Legends, which, close enough, right?
Let me take a minute to tell you more about our sponsors. SecurityCentric strives to be the trusted partner that secures your information assets deemed critical for your business. SecurityCentric also delivers the highest level of security expertise and support to their clients. Even further, SecurityCentric provides independent cybersecurity assessments and advisory against best practice industry standards and compliance frameworks. Working as an extension of your team, SecurityCentric helps you recognize and control data risks to your business by understanding your level of risk. In short, SecurityCentric provides many solution offerings from assessment and advisory, managed security services, cloud and infrastructure validation, vulnerability management and testing, and payment security. Get in touch with the team at securitycentrics.com to learn more, or email info@securitycentrics.com. That's SecuriCentrix.com.
One to watch out of all of this is CZ, the CEO of Binance. And he's done a number of things. In SBF's apology tweet, he points to what he calls a sparring partner, as in well played. I won't get into the whole debacle of what happened over last weekend or over last week between CZ from Binance and SBF, but Binance have now set up this kind of recovery fund for those that were, wiped out or significantly damaged or hurt by what happened with FTX. They are kind of mopping up right now. And, it's going to be interesting to see how Binance do out of all of this. And I still think it's so funny. Two things to close on this. All of the folks who don't say the word finance, they say the word finance. How do you say it?
Finance.
Yeah. I hear them actually refer to Binance as Binance.
That sounds stupid.
And there's a certain demographic of usually bros from West Coast or East Coast,
Yeah,
well-educated in finance. I'm going to say finance, not finance, that call Binance Binance. So look out for those folks.
yeah.
Once you see more and more people referring to Binance as Binance, you know that, okay, they've really won coming out of this whole FTX drama.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about this today is shout out to Barry Skinner, who in one of our Signal channels talking about all this to SBF as scam, bankrupt, fraud. Okay. So, and a penniless itinerant, and we'll leave it at that. I don't think he's that penniless. Anyway,
Moving on.
moving along to Back to the Future.
Okay.
Elon Musk with Twitter. This just clicked when you sent it to me. He didn't actually buy Twitter because he loves social media. He bought a big global hyperactive audience, didn't he?
Yeah.
And going back to the future with what he tried to do with X.com back in the 90s, that became PayPal, but that just became totally different than I think perhaps what his original vision was. And now looking at, well, I've got a massive, huge global audience here. I've got millions of users. Let's look at how we might be able to leverage that into what his original X.com version was of being this WeChat-like super app. And that's where WeChat started. It's in the name. It's chat.
Yeah.
Twitter, what do? You chat. So, sort of. Or you troll, you comment, you profess, you pronounce, you distribute, whatever you want to do. That looks really interesting. You want to talk us through what's going on with him detailing his vision for a Twitter payment system?
Yeah. Yes. So I saw this on a few sites. Financial Times commented on it, and TechCrunch actually, which is the one I was referring to. But yeah, I believe he applied for a license of broader kind of financial services, but mainly around payments initially, and detailed it to the staff. And there were some questions around loans, and he talked about, he certainly wasn't going to leave out the opportunity to provide a key kind of financial services product. But ultimately, I think he was talking about providing some sort of access to high yield deposits and payments within Twitter. And I think he's ultimately, it's like we've talked about with others, it's, if you have that captive audience, how do you monetize them? By providing fairly easy to roll out financial services products. Payments being the first one within the app. Payments seems like a no-brainer, especially when you have people having to start paying for the verification. They've already got their card details set up and everything. Now you can start paying different kind of partners or different people that you're following or whatever, subscriptions. You can see all that kind of being moved inside. So even like we reference 4 or 5 people now of newsletters that we subscribe to. Some of those offer paid options. I'd say there's no reason why you wouldn't see those people start to put their subscription links and everything within Twitter so that you can pay in Twitter. So it makes a lot of sense when you have that much of a captive audience. I suppose the challenge is that it doesn't appear from the outside that he's doing a good job of Twitter in the first instance anyway.
Yeah.
But anyone that has a massive following on Twitter is not going to be in a mad rush to leave it. So, he probably has plenty of time and kind of goodwill to get things right. And it makes total sense. Why wouldn't he try to do it? If it's not going to be a huge endeavor to start bringing in some payments and some other solutions in the same way we've seen it in other kind of, Square, I suppose, is one, and Block that we've talked about in a considerable way with Cash App. That's probably the model he's looking at. It's just that they've had 10 years ahead of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I it's fascinating because this is all, rolling into so many different directions that this could all go with Twitter. And I'm just sitting here thinking about how Twitter works today. So much noise out there, but then at least 10% of it is genuine, helpful thoughts that I use and leverage in what I do every day from an investment perspective.
Yeah.
So would I pay for it? Yeah, I probably would, because I still find myself, hey, I heard someone talking about a tweet on a podcast. I want to go find that tweet because I know if I look further down in the thread, there's going to be a helpful snippet that's going to get me to think about something a little bit differently and give me some more conviction in a certain area, right? So if Twitter were to expand into some type of financial account, would it be something that I would feel comfortable using? Well, not if it was just some, insecure message board, but if it were more, intended to become an ecosystem. And yeah, this could go in a lot of different ways, but
Yeah, sorry. And
obviously just the beginning.
I found some bit more detail on it here. It's talking about initially monetizing content creation. So like that, if you want to pay for specific content that you've seen from Packy McCormick, for example, but more as a one-off, low value, high volume types of payments, that's what they're targeting initially, which, they'll take a cut of. And I suppose the article here, this is a Forbes article, that what they're saying is the challenge with that around economics will be that, he's then responsible for the in-app payments on the particular platforms anyway. So for example, the iOS app would have to pay a 30% fee, so Twitter would have to add a fee on top of that. So the economics would be very tough on it. However, it's potentially peer-to-peer transfers where there could be considerable value. And that's what he talks about in a separate conversation. He was talking about if you've got a balance on your account, you want to send money to someone else within Twitter. So you could see in a situation where we would, load up our Twitter wallet, and every so often you'd see a piece of content that you'd want to access or purchase, and that's it. You just purchase it as a one-off by sending it within the app to somebody. You could see a huge potential market in that.
You know what I'm thinking though? Like back the problem in the 90s with all this is that the internet wasn't designed, and the base layers of technology in this and the coding, the software, what was not developed for payments. And what we've done over the last 25 years is really just, put band-aids and bubblegum on top of the whole thing to be able to support payments. Now, look at things now in the year 2022. Is a social media system really, a social media platform, really safe, secure, engineered for all this? When Facebook moved to Facebook Pay, I'm not sure how much of that has taken off. And it's just because people aren't used to engaging in everyday spending and decisions based upon what's going on on their Facebook account, right? Yeah. But Twitter's different to an extent. Could a critical mass of Twitter users who are monetizing content and a critical mass of Twitter users who want to consume that content, would there be enough value changing hands in either fiat or crypto here? Because that is a real possibility. Will there be enough of a critical mass to move in the direction of Twitter becoming the original X.com vision, and that he did just buy a massive global audience for what he wanted to do? If anyone would do it, it would be Elon Musk.
Probably the better comparison here would be YouTube ultimately, who makes the majority of its revenue from ads, but obviously fills ads to that with content. So I don't think he's looking to turn this into, it's entirely funded by content creation, but the majority of people on Twitter with large followings are creating content of some kind. So, being able to replace some of that revenue he's lost from advertising by bringing in subscriptions or payments or whatever seems to be a good move, given the types of users that are on Twitter and what they're using it for.
Yeah. I'd say the audience of Twitter, the user base of Twitter, is big enough where if they're going to spend a boatload on trying to build this, that they should at least have break even. I mean, with all the layoffs that Twitter has been doing and the manner in which Elon Musk is communicating that, which is pretty crap.
And look, payments is the first step. If he can get payments right on it and get people using it, even if that just breaks even, then obviously being able to roll out, whether it's small loans, small dollar loans, whatever it is, following along with what Cash App is doing.
Yeah.
There's great potential there then.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where he ends up with this.
It's one to watch.
But it was, like I said, it was, you start thinking about these things differently when, someone like Owen Fitzgerald sends you a post and says, this is more than just what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you. Next thing you wanted to look at were the startup founders in the UK going to war with the UK government over its moves to appoint a bank into this key ecosystem role, right? Which is, okay, let's appoint Barclays to run Tech Nation in the UK, which is kind of the startup policy and promotion arm of the UK startup industry, more or less, or UK startup tech industry, which just doesn't feel right, a bank kind of taking that over. Where did this one come from?
Again, this is one on TechCrunch, but I saw this a couple of weeks back. So it was formed, Tech Nation was two previous government bodies. It was formed in 2019, supporting about 4,000 UK companies. It gets 75% of its revenue from government grants. So effectively a government agency or a semi-state or whatever.
A Quango,
and then
as it's referred
Quango,
to.
Yeah.
A quasi-NGO.
Then it went out to tender and Barclays got awarded the contract. And I remember seeing it and thinking, well, we talked about this, a version of this a few weeks ago when we talked about, oh God, what was that?
Fintech
company?
utilities.
Yes, fintech utilities, exactly. And we said, is it right that a valuable resource in the industry would be acquired or majority owned by one particular player? And we were in agreement that no. And then you have an important resource to an industry being owned by one particular player or run by one particular player. You can't argue that in any way that there's going to be, that everyone's going to be treated fairly, or it would appear that they'd be treated fairly. You're talking about some of the best and brightest companies potentially coming out of the UK here, and Barclays having the inside track on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just a parallel to what's going on in Ireland. I mean, the National Digital Research Center, which was not quite Tech Nation, but at least it was a government entity that was helping to promote and sponsor investment into startups and research alongside it, was being run by someone called Digital Hub, I think. And then the contract went up for tender and Dogpatch Labs won it and just had a big vision. Now, Dogpatch Labs doing this versus, say, Bank of Ireland, Jesus, that would be night and day, right? So it doesn't feel right. And Barclays have done a number of things over the years with startup ecosystems and that have been incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. It's not a slight or a knock on Barclays. We've both been involved in stuff they've been doing in the UK. They're incredibly good at it. It's just that I don't think you can allow a situation where something that's that important to the industry can be owned by one player at the detriment to others. So I think what happened here was 60 kind of co-signatories, co-founders of Wise and things like that, all signed up to a letter saying that they thought that that this should be, the government should be funding this and it should stay like that. It should be grounded in the startup ecosystem and local ecosystem, not looking to ride on its coattails, is what they said in the letter.
Yes.
So I just thought like that, look, we're both well averse on what goes on in the industry here and how that helps and supports. And I just thought it was an interesting kind of comparison to what goes on here.
Yeah, definitely. Jumping across the Atlantic to the United States of America, we have a announcement that U.S. banks are launching a digital asset settlement platform, and alongside that, the story that you shared, which I think is the reference to the same thing, global banks partner with New York Fed for 12-week digital dollar pilot, right? So
just thought it was interesting context to everything else that's going on in the crypto space.
Yeah, totally. And it's kind of like saying, well, let's see if we can leverage some of this technology to introduce to the traditional financial infrastructure some of the benefits of blockchain technology. Now, this is a story that's been going on since 2014, 2015. And in reality, what it is that any technology, whatever it is, if you want a big bunch of banks to adopt new technology and do something together, that's going to take a heck of a long time.
Yeah.
So there's been a initiative on this side of the pond in Europe for, back since 2015, when I first saw it coming out. It was Universal Settlement Coin. And I forget the original name of the player who was promoting this project, but they're now called Finality. And they have become very institutional. And it was the same thing that is being proposed here in the US, and where I think it's being, a regulated liability network. So to be able to have wholesale or central bank money moving around between banks in a tokenized form, which is great. But this is kind of a precursor to central bank digital currency, or one of the elements of parts of a framework that you would need to have in place for central bank digital currency to work. And central bank digital currency, to me, is way too much of a government looking over my shoulder in terms of what I'm doing with my money. right? So, but it was, some of the names that are in here in the other story on Finextra were BNY Mellon, HSBC, PNC, TD Bank, Truist, and US Bank are all participating in the experiment, which is critical word, with the technology provided by Settle, which tried to do something on this side of the pond. Settle went a few different directions, and Digital Asset, which have been working on replacing the Australian stock exchange system with blockchain technology for the last 5 or 6 years, and it keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. Again, probably more indicative of bank adoption of new technology and financial infrastructure provider adoption of new technology, and also powered by AWS. No brainer, right? So this, I think, right sentiment in terms of, hey, in the face of what's going on with crypto and FTX and Binance and everything happening and all the drama there, can we point to a use case that is going to actually be helpful? Absolutely. We've been pointing to this for years. It's going to take an awful long time for the banks to sort this out. And the failings of FTX, I'm going to go out on a limb. It had zero to do with blockchain technology. It just had to do with bad business, right?
Yep.
So that is where we stand. One last thing I wanted to mention.
Yep.
Obviously, the situation here in Ireland, where tons of people are being laid off across Meta, Twitter, Stripe.
Yeah.
And this was an article in the Sunday Business Post, an article in the Business Post. The only reason that I have access to Business Post is that I started paying for a subscription when Charlie Taylor moved over there. Shout out to Charlie Taylor.
Same. Big fan of Charlie.
Yeah, definitely. And that there's lots of people obviously now on the job hunt, and that this has happened over the last few weeks, but they're being scooped up.
Right
Now, for a long time, people, the financial services, the International Financial Services Center in Ireland, which was a huge success story in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, but then kind of technology caught up with things, but the financial services industry did not. And people were like, well, if I want to do something new and innovative, I'm going to go work for one of these big tech firms. And now they're all laying them off. So hopefully there's that influx of talent back into the financial services firms to get them to actually embrace digital technologies in a serious manner in what we call the fund services industry. The second impact, hopefully, is that they go into startups, and that you've got people that are coming out with some bank
domain expertise.
And we bring that into the startup ecosystem, which would just be phenomenal. Obviously, people need to take risks in order to do that with their livelihoods.
But there's great supports out there now, even better than there was before. Enterprise Ireland has their new pre-seed fund. That's 100K potentially to start something, which is far better for the market. It's very well received in the market, things like that. So hopefully we get more great startups out of it.
Absolutely. And the article referenced Brian Caulfield, and he said, I would hope that a lot of these people will end up in our own tech sector, maybe even consider starting their own businesses. Right? Shout out to Brian. He's been a stalwart of the tech startup scene over the last 20 years here in Ireland. So all good. So, obviously job losses suck, but it looks like, it feels like the job market is buoyant enough here, and talking to some of our recruiter friends who have commented the same thing, that the hiring going on right now is still just incredible. So, good luck to everybody. And if anybody wants to bounce a startup idea off of me in Web3, blockchain, and crypto, reach out and get in touch. Absolutely. I know Dave Cunningham offered the same thing, and shout out to Dave. It's a good friend, and that, we're here to help. So let's do it.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you, pal.
Pleasure as always, buddy.
You hang in there with the vomiting bug, and keep that under control. Yeah.
Until I can get back to eating normally, I'll be happy.
Thank you. Adios.
Take it easy.
That does it for this week, folks. You can learn more about the stories we covered in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Createson for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie on how to get in touch with us, or just drop us an email on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!